Dang, those are some beautiful watches. You know, I think someone should do a comparison of these two. Yeah, I think they should.
What's up, guys? Hope you guys are having a great day. Welcome to the channel, the Watch Your Style channel, where we review watches, talk watches, and talk fashion. So today, I'm super excited. I want to compare a couple watches in my collection that are my favorites, among my favorites. The Rolex Explorer Reference 214270, and then the Rolex Datejust 41 with the Jubilee bracelet and the fluted white gold bezel and blue dial. Now, I understand these are two vastly different watches. They're not really similar. I mean, they're kind of similar to both, Oyster Perpetuals. They both have kind of the non-maxi style case. But, the Datejust is something that's a bit more dressy, whereas the Explorer is definitely more of a sporty watch. So I kind of just wanted to show how these two watches stack up next to each other, how they wear on the wrist, what the build quality is, what kind of materials are used, what movements are in both of these watches. And hopefully you guys can get a sense through this video if you're deciding between the two, which watch you should go with, or just kind of get a sense of the differences between the two, because these two are very popular and are relatively accessible models in the Rolex line. Without further ado, guys, let me go ahead and flip the camera and let's have a look at the watches. Here we have it, guys. The Rolex Explorer Reference 214270, and then on the left here we have the Rolex Datejust 41. So let's take a closer look at these two watches. So let's walk through some of the dimensions. The Explorer is 39 millimeters in diameter, not including the crown. The Rolex Datejust is 41 millimeters in diameter, excluding the crown. They're both 20 millimeters in terms of their lug width, and they have a beautiful taper. It tapers down to 16. In terms of the wingspan, or the lug tip to lug tip, we're looking at about 47.6 on the Rolex Datejust 41, and a thickness of about 12 millimeters. On the Explorer, the wingspan or lug tip to lug tip is about 47 millimeters. The thickness, surprisingly, is actually thinner than the Datejust 41 at only about 11.2 millimeters. So it's a little bit thinner. So let's go through the differences between the two movements. The Rolex Caliber 3235 powering the Datejust 41 is sort of the latest and greatest movement from Rolex. This contains a new Chronergy escapement. It's sort of part of the movement that helps regulate the power that's delivered from the mainspring via the oscillator. This escapement actually improves the efficiency by about 15%. It actually bumps up the power reserve up to 70 hours. The added power reserve is a huge benefit just from a convenience standpoint. Now, the movement powering the Explorer is the Caliber 3132. It's a tried and true Rolex movement. Now, this movement only has about 48 hours of power reserve, but it comes with all of the goodies that you've come to expect with Rolex calibers, such as a paramagnetic blue parachrome hairspring with Breguet overcoil, a large balance wheel, 4 gold regulating screws, Rolex's Paraflex shock absorbers as well. Now, one of the benefits that I've seen of the older caliber of the 31 series or 3132 is that there's far less rotor noise than you would find on the newer generation 3200 series. There's definitely a bit more rotor noise on the newer caliber, and on the older one, there's virtually no rotor noise. So if that's important to you, that's definitely something to consider. Now, both of these watches are 100 meters water resistant. They have the classic Oyster style case. As you can see, both of these watches, they don't feature the maxi case that you would see on the subs and the GMT Master 2s, which I really like. I like the fact that it has a more slim, tapered, elegant design on both of these watches. Now, a key difference in the clasps of these watches is that the Rolex Datejust 41 just kind of has a single lock clasp that just closes on one click like that. Still very secure, but an added benefit of the Explorer is that it has the Oyster lock with the 2-click locking mechanism, so it has added security there to keep the watch on your wrist. Both of these watches feature the Easy Link extension system, which gives your watch about 5 millimeters of on-the-fly adjustment. And you can see on the Datejust 41, that's available there too. Now let's talk about how these watches wear. My wrists are 6.5 inches in diameter. And let me show you how the Explorer wears. As you can see, it wears very beautifully. It fits very well. The tapered bracelet is just such a huge plus. It makes the bracelet so comfortable and gives it just a very elegant profile as well. Also, the shape of the oyster links are very comfortable. I griped about this about my Omega Seamaster, where the links are kind of sharp. You just don't get that with Rolex bracelets. In terms of versatility, the Explorer can be dressed up or dressed down. It's just kind of it has a very kind of neutral design. It doesn't stand out too much, but yet it's elegant and sporty and just has a very great go anywhere, do anything design, which is part of the reason why this watch is so sought after and so beloved by many Rolex fans in the watch community at large. Now the Rolex Datejust 41 also wears very beautifully on my wrist. It's definitely a lot dressier, as you can see, especially this variation with the fluted bezel and the Jubilee bracelet. The Datejust 41 does come in a bunch of variations. It has the smooth bezel, it has the oyster bracelet variant available as well, if a more flashy look is not your style. But part of the reason why I kind of picked up the Datejust was because it has the flashy kind of more baller look, if you will. In terms of every day, the Explorer is definitely more than enough. But for those special occasions and for times that I'm just kind of craving a more, I don't know, elegant and semi-flashy watch, the Datejust definitely scratches that itch. And of course, the Datejust also comes with the added convenience of having a date window. It really comes in handy, especially during your work week and especially during, you know, these Corona times when sometimes you don't know what date it is, let alone what day of the week. To me, that's an added bonus, but it can come at a disadvantage when you have to set the date if the watch stops running and you have to go in and set the date in addition to the time. In terms of legibility, both of these watches are lumed with Rolex's proprietary Chromolite. It's not the brightest lume, but it is very long lasting. It lasts longer than your standard lume, even though it's not the brightest. Now the Datejust is definitely less legible than the Explorer in the dark. It has these sort of baton hour markers. If you look at a macro level, there's actually not a ton of lume applied to the actual hands of the minute hands and the hour hands. So it would be kind of nice if on the Datejust they increase the amount of lume a little bit on those hands. It would be an added convenience in terms of legibility. Now in terms of legibility, the Explorer definitely has it over the Datejust. This Mark II with the 3, 6, and 9 loomed indices, Mercedes hour hand, and then the elongated minute hand really make this watch extremely legible any time of the day. At a glance, it's extremely easy to discern what time it is. Now let me leave you guys with some final thoughts on both these watches. I think they're both excellent watches. They're beautifully designed. One of the biggest things that Rolex does well is that they have this classic, timeless, elegant design. They're known for evolution rather than revolution. The watches all sort of retain that core DNA of design, and they don't do anything too garish or too outlandish. And that's what makes Rolex such a well-respected and big brand that's persevered through the ages, including the quartz crisis and all of that. And if you're deciding between these watches, I would say you really can't go wrong with either. If you're looking for an all-rounder every day that's very versatile, I would personally go with the Explorer. It's not as dressy. It has the brushed finishing on the bracelet. It has the oyster lock clasp. Now the Datejust 41 is definitely just a more dressy watch overall. It is offered in different variations in addition to the model that I have, with a polished smooth bezel, an oyster bracelet, but it still does have a more dressy vibe. If you look at the variation with the oyster bracelet, the center links are still going to be polished on that one, and overall the watch is still just going to look a bit more on the dressy side. But I would say that that variation does have a more casual look and a more everyday appeal versus the variation that I have. And then another factor is availability. Rolex Explorer is a stainless steel Rolex sports model, which many people know basically means that it's a lot harder to find at retail. If you can't find the Explorer at retail, oftentimes you'll have to pay a premium on the secondary market or the gray market. And so, is it worth the wait? Now I understand the Explorer is not
the hardest stainless steel sports model to find, especially when you compare it to like the GMT Master 2 or the Submariner, or especially like the Daytona. When you look at a store shop window at a Rolex store, most of the models that they have out on display that are available for immediate purchase will be the Datejust. For the Explorer, I actually had a pre-existing relationship with one of my ADs, so they were able to call me as soon as they had one in stock. So that's something to consider as well. It's not ideal, but it's just the reality of the brand. Sometimes you have to establish that relationship with your authorized dealer so that they can quote unquote hook you up with more desirable stainless steel models. It's something that's definitely scoffed at in the watch community, but it is something that Rolex does unabashedly, and it is something quite arguably that increases the level of want or desire for their timepieces. So with that being said, guys, I'm going to close out this video. Let me know what you think of these two watches. Let me know which one you would go with. Would you go with the Explorer with the more understated, sporty appeal? Would you go with the Datejust with the more dressy, elegant appeal? What are the advantages and disadvantages of the two watches? I know I covered a lot of ground, so let me know if there are any areas that I can improve upon, if there's anything that I missed. And if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for your support, and I will catch you guys in the next video. And I wish you guys health and happiness going into 2021. Thanks again, and talk to you guys soon.